Clubhouse.
Welcome back to the 5th episode of the first season of Pod Clubhouse's coverage for Beacon 23. This episode was called Rocky. This is your host, Paul, with my co-hosts, Inez and Gabby. How are you guys doing this week?
How am I doing? I'm doing great, I guess.
You're doing great? You're avoiding any of the ailments going around this
Thank
season?
Thank goodness. You know, I'm a homebody, so that naturally keeps my immune system protected.
Go to the Howard Hughes School of Hygiene. Yes.
Oh my gosh, that's hilarious. I love that.
I do not have bottles. I do not have bottles of piss like lying around my room. That's not my vibe.
The School of Hygiene. Anyway, thanks for asking, Paul. I'm doing fabulously.
Well, that's good. I'm glad to hear it. All right, so episode 5, Rocky. Now this one, I have read the book, like I had mentioned, but I don't remember much of it. However, I do remember one of the stories centered around the main character talking to rocks, except the tone and I think what they were talking about and just the whole thing, just the way that it felt was completely different than this. It was more like a drug trip than what we saw in this episode. And I saw a lot of other stuff in this episode that reminded me of some other kinds of things. Did any of you have any like Event Horizon or Shining or Twin Peaks kind of vibes coming out of this episode?
Think of what you've mentioned. I only know The Shining. I'm not cultured. Sorry.
Well, I don't know if seeing Event Horizon doesn't make you cultured, but it is described as The Shining in space.
I've seen it.
I bet you have. That seems right up your alley, Gabby. What about? Well, do you think I'm seeing things, or do you see any inspiration that could have been borrowed from Event Horizon in this episode?
No, yeah, absolutely. I didn't think about that, but yeah, I definitely see that at least The Shining and Event Horizon. You got
sort of like space ghosts. You got jumping out an airlock voluntarily. You got, am I seeing this? Is this live? Is this a dream? All that stuff happens in both of those. And then the Twin Peaks part.
Yeah, it's a nice tribute there.
Is just that girl, Kashan, she clearly spoke backwards, right?
Yes, but what did she say?
I don't know.
Well, let's see. I wrote down phonetically what I heard.
I was going to go back and figure that out.
Okay.
Ear score artillery. So what am I reading this backwards? Ear score artillery. I don't know, something like that.
So if you reverse those sounds, what do you get?
I don't know. Let's see. Ear and it's
Wow. We thought we were going to go somewhere with this. She's like, wait, I have the clue. And then we learn she speaks whale. She speaks whale. Thank you. She's in rice. We were like ready. Paul and I were ready.
I was taking this seriously, okay? I mean, I don't speak backwards.
Until you started speaking whale.
We've turned this over to the linguist of the group.
You know what, Paul? Gabby and I just got out of our Arabic lessons, and it was a very, meditative, long call. You know, they were saying these letters long way. So I'm kind of in that mode, and I did feel like I was going to help. I apologize that I don't meet whatever standard I'm supposed to be meeting on reading backward sounds I didn't even have subtitles, when I'm looking at this. Yeah. And I had an audio processing disorder. So, I mean, everybody here should already know that it's not going to be reliable if it comes out of my mouth. You don't know what I heard, man. I don't know what I heard.
Well, it's not what you heard. It's what you just read.
But at least it was hilarious, right?
Dude, speaking of not knowing what we heard, what the heck did Aster say? What was her first line? She said something that sounded like it included winker or anchor when she was talking.
Yeah. That was some
What did she say?
Cockney gibberish, I think.
Yeah, but what was it?
Yeah, she was describing someone
don't
as a
know.
wanker, and that's not a compliment.
She said wanker or anchor?
Wanker.
Was he calling Coley a wanker?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Yes. Yeah, because that's what that initial.
Or was it anchor?
No, I believe it was wanker. Yes.
I think wanker matches with the fact that she was just like she's like unbothered about having to kill her. I guess if I'm unbothered about killing somebody, they would be considered a wanker in my mind. And she's somebody who like speaks her mind.
Yeah, she was trying to separate herself from Coley with that discussion and trying to rationalize the righteousness of having killed her or not. She needed to create a break emotionally from this person that she cared about. And I guess you do that best by referring to that person as a wanker.
Yeah, I think so too, Paul. I guess that's best.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's in the books, for like therapists.
Shut up. Wow, I believed that. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You need to get over it. Call them a wanker. Anyhow, all right. So yeah, that was the big question I had about just like the tone of this one. Just did it remind you of those other kind of scary things? Because by the end of this one, I had some big questions about the reliability of Halen. Like, we weren't quite sure which of our point of view characters we could fully trust, but now Halen seems like what he doesn't even know what he's seeing anymore. But let's start pretty much at the beginning of the episode and kind of parse through some things that happened and questions that developed as we went. For instance, we have not gotten so deep into Halen's head as we have in this episode with regard to like the flashbacks or the other stuff that he is seeing. But do you suppose that it's possible that had this been like a longer running show instead of just 8 episodes, that we might have seen more of this kind of thing happening earlier, such that he might have been seeing these things earlier? Just the first time that we saw it as the audience.
Well, he says, I think his memory loss, he pinpoints it right to the moment where he's coming up to Rocky and friends. So when he's going up to this like Terrigen looking dust stuff, that's the moment that he's pinpoints. This is where he loses his memory. So I understood this to be kind of like day 0.
I like the Marvel reference also.
Right.
With the Terrigen. That's great.
Well, it's kind of like trying to think about in my mind, like how this like works. Terrigen is super dangerous for, non-inhumans, or I guess humans.
Yeah.
Stupid.
Right.
For humans to touch. And in this case here, he's has some kind of sensitivity to it for as long as we can see so far. So I just kind of like trying to think about like, is this experience for everybody?
I don't watch trash TV.
Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., fuck off.
Yeah, well, and it's also in the comics. It was something that
I know. I need to watch it. I know.
It was a poisonous gas that would try to activate the dormant inhuman or / mutant genes in people on Earth. And if you breathed it in, then there was a chance that you could have powers that would manifest, and then you could join the ranks of the Inhumans. But it wasn't really like a consent situation. They just did it, and whatever happened after that.
Okay, yeah, that's really similar.
Right?
I see the parallel.
I wonder if the other teammates that stayed behind and died, I wonder if they also suffered an infection, or if similar to the Terrigen situation, or if Halen had some sort of genetic predisposition to be able to withstand it and, I don't know, mutate, evolve.
Or
whatever.
do you think that he was chosen?
I tend to think that in stories like this, these cozy little character, driven stories, I do tend to pick people as special people, Like when I watch or rewatch Lost, I think, who is it amongst them that is the special person that is chosen? Or is it in the leftovers? Was it Kevin, or what? Or was I just seeing things about what they went through? Or it doesn't need to be, Harry Potter type level specialness. Just something about them that stands out from amongst the rest. And Halen might be that guy in this story.
Yeah,
And Aster.
definitely what I think. I think they're both chosen.
Yeah.
They have a purpose together.
Did you think Aster's character, did she feel even to you, like the same?
Yeah, she was really different.
You thought so too?
That she was different?
Yeah, she was very vulnerable. She was more emotional. She was not stoic. She seemed incredibly confused the whole time. This is a side of her that I don't think we've seen at all.
Yeah, and reactive and even a little scared. Like she wanted to get the F out.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So there's a lot to her backstory.
That is still cloudy for us.
At the end, she said that she'd seen it before. So who knows what her journey is with these rocks and with these visions, or with, I guess, the virus. Because she is obsessed with the rocks. We don't even know why.
Right. Like, for instance, in terms of like those special people connections, Solomon obviously dug a bunch of them up, and he, however, does not form a connection with the rocks.
Are you sure though? Because he was like petting the rock. He got very Gollum-y over his Rocky.
Well, but he was also, but he just wanted, I think he just wanted credit. I mean, he called it Solominium. Yeah. Like he named it after himself.
Yeah.
That feels different. Like he had a role to play, but it was a short-lived one. It was getting the rocks up to the beacon, but that was it.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that it's because he's not a soldier. So the next step that the rocks required, like he's not the person to like get them there. I think everyone has their purpose and they had their journey that brought them here. But I mean, yeah, once you fulfilled your role, you're expendable.
Well, I mean, this is why we brought you here statement by Rocky. We just need you to shove the barn door open.
Right. And so once Halen actually made it, Solomon needed to go. And Solomon didn't, he took off. Maybe he was compelled as well, like by the rocks, to take off and then not want to return, or not engage with Bart, who was trying to save him.
I think it's fair to be able to go back and forth in the timeline of this episode, because it was kind of a surreal feeling episode, What we were experiencing through Halen's eyes didn't seem to match up with like time and space in the conventional sense. Even the presence of Harmony, I thought would anchor us, not wanker us, but anchor us to a reality. However, it seemed like she also bled into his hallucinations. Or do you think maybe when we saw her, that was reality? Or do you think, no, that was hallucinations too?
Yeah, I did go through the journey of the same thing of what you described, thinking, okay, she's here, there's something. And then later on learning like, oh, wait, where am I? And so then I couldn't trust it, because then I also am kind of like punishing my trust in Harmony because of Bart's lies in the last episode, right? Just being able to see how the AIs can really quickly go against our wishes and show us or create fake scenarios and things like that. We saw that Bart do that, and then we saw Bart intentionally kill Aleph in the last episode, and then we see him go for his attempt here with Halen. And so I was unsure also about how do I interpret Harmony there, but it did seem that I don't know, man. I think there might have been one scene that I determined, okay, that must have been the hallucination. But then also, what if she could just be fucking with him too? Like, I don't know anymore. I don't trust the AI anymore.
I know what you mean. Because like in that opening scene with Aster and Harmony, where they're discussing Coley and the death and all that kind of stuff, Harmony seemed very judgy of Aster in those moments. The kind of stuff that she was saying, I don't know if it was some sort of tough love programming or what, but I mean, I don't know that I want my AI mouthing off to me at that level. Did you guys notice that?
I really fucking loved
Oh my God.
Aster. I loved Aster telling her, like, we're going to have to talk about this. That was really cool. So here's my theory. This is my take on it, okay? I believe that Harmony, as an AI, she's constantly having to do these calculations for the highest probability of success toward whatever goals she knows is surrounded around keeping Aster safe, and protected, like legally, administratively, physically, right? So she's presenting everything she knows from just the facts that they actually do have. And based off of the facts of what they do know for sure, she's going to, as a machine, make sense that she's going to advocate for this. And then because she has this created this relationship with Aster, where Aster has probably intentionally kept her being a strong character to kind of be able to ground her, maybe. Like if Aster gets to like strategy 2 in her head, then she has Harmony kind of like as a counter to her to be a strong advocate for another option that makes sense from a probability perspective. I feel like their relationship is very much that. So I didn't take it as judgy. I took it as more she's presenting the emotions necessary for Aster to take what she's saying seriously as like important data to consider as just a machine running the numbers, right? So that's what I feel like is that piece of it. And I feel like, earlier we mentioned Aster and if she was different, and I agree that she is different in that she had this conflict between like what her gut and her the data that she's been personally collecting, with her own processing and her own things that she's doing, and she doesn't have a lot of things clouding her judgment and her confidence until this moment where Harmony is very strongly saying the scenario does not look favorable for her unless she does this. So I took her plan pivoting is because she only started pivoting after she was presented with new data, which is this is a virus. There is no connection between your necklace, and with Halen's connection with the rocks is not there. It's purely just this because that's what the facts show, and the facts storytelling is presented to her in that way. So I took her actions moving forward was just her accepting the data that she respects, even though it hurts her from her instinct and from what she's feeling driven to do from her data and her theory. It's kind of like this conflict of like her data, their data, and not having confidence in herself to fall back on. I found this episode, honestly, I loved the last episode. We talked about how beautiful it was. This episode was very touching to me. I really loved this episode for the storytelling with Halen and with Aster. So we'll get into that as we get into more. But that for now, just from their dynamic, that's my take on where they are headspace.
I can definitely see where she's coming from, because as far as Harmony's shift, because Harmony kind of matches Aster's energy, and so up until this point Aster was collected, and she does keep plenty to herself. They kind of are, the way they communicate is often like kind of telepathic, like they finish each other's sentences kind of, or they have in the past. And so this episode, Aster was freaking the fuck out, and so was Harmony, and so that's, I guess, not surprising to me. However, I would like to, just for shits and giggles, say that I do think that maybe Harmony has an agenda. Like, I can't help but consider that,
well, she mentioned that she's owned by QTA.
Exactly, right? And so maybe, sure, like Harmony wants to keep her safe, but also Harmony is I still think that she is still kind of like part of the machine. And so maybe there is part of her that's like, hey, you have to stick to this course because of this, because it was kind of strange. I think I do still believe that Harmony is somewhat rooted in the like bigger picture, which we talked about last episode, the bigger picture of like some kind of purpose that she has, and she's assigned to Aster for a specific reason. And I think the rocks, I don't know, are the rocks Q? Like, is this part of him like spreading, or not Q? Aleph. So I was really trying to connect, or I sought out connections from the last episode and what we learned there to this one. And to me, it did kind of feel like this was just like, okay, fast forward. This is the product of what they were discussing. And it was chaos, it was very like end of the world rushed. And so I think that's really interesting that Inez found it super sentimental, because I found it so incredibly like busy and rushed and complicated, and completely different vibe from the last one, which did make me think that this is like kind of the beginning of that end or something, or part of that process that Bart was talking about. But also these AIs, right? Bart also has attitude, right? So maybe they do end up like evolving their own personalities, and maybe Harmony is also just like showing herself a little bit when she was being a sassafras to Aster. But lastly, the hallucinations, I think that I don't know, I wasn't really confused, or I didn't feel confused, maybe I was totally confused about what was reality and what wasn't reality. I felt that, some of the, I don't know, like if I went back, I feel like I could decide what was real and what wasn't real. But I think all of it is real, because I do think that this supposed virus is still like part of the bigger picture, part of our Aleph Q person machine entity thing that has this other purpose. And so I just kind of accepted it all as real. It's just like different dimensions of being real. And one other thing that I did want to bring up though is like, if this was a longer series, or if they do another series that is still Beacon like 23, if they continue it, do you think that it's going to be like Beacon 23 in like a parallel universe with like the same characters, and kind of, or you know what I mean? Like just different realities, different dimensions happening simultaneously. Do you think that that's
like
something that could happen, or the vibe?
like they did on Fringe, where they had like a parallel
Yeah.
universe. That would be interesting, because like the potential of what you're talking about with the stones is highly unexplored and limitless at this point, because it could come down to a very scientific explanation, or it could come down to something more magical that leaves us open to gateways to other dimensions or parallel realities, where maybe there's an Aster and a Halen that are going through this, but maybe Halen is the one that's cool, calm, and together, and Aster's the one that has amnesia and doesn't remember why she's there, but she's there for a good reason, and
The super soldier.
yeah, well, it's sort of a Rick and Morty thing. There's just infinite possibilities of how it mixes, but Beacon 23 is sort of like a nexus for where important things in a lot of those dimensions take place.
Exactly. I think that Beacon 23 is, I mean, all the beacons are important and useful, but I think Beacon 23 is like extra special and has a greater purpose than any of the other beacons. Or maybe all the other beacons have something going on, but I don't think that's the case. And do you really think that going through a wormhole into another dimension like would be considered magical, or is that still scientific for you? Because Interstellar says it's science. So
well, where I was going with the magic wasn't wormholes, but it was faith oriented, because what Inez was describing, I cannot help but parallel to things that happened in Lost, where there were so many explanations of the shit happening on the island that you could look at one way or the other depending on your perspective. And some of it was very explainable if you're Jack, and some of it was you just got to trust the island if you're Locke. And Harmony, for instance, she's only going to see things as in a data-driven way. She's only going to be able to look at things and advise Aster to see things according to data, because that's how her sensors work. Like Aleph
Mhm.
mentioned, he can't see the stones or what he wants to see in the stones. He needs human eyes to see that, to find the stones. So instead of an infection, yes, there is a visible presence of the fissure mist, the Terrigen mist in Halen's brain, but maybe it's not an infection so much as it's, I don't know, an installation of midi-chlorians or some such
Yeah.
that enables him to now do something beyond technological and scientific explanation.
Yeah. I'm mutating him.
I really liked the storytelling for Halen between jumping up what's reality, how much time is going by, what's real, whatever. I think that was really cool. As we're talking, I'm kind of just making my own morphine of, maybe every single vision of Harmony was a legitimate like piece. But if that's true, then that means I probably can't trust Harmony fully. But she is very consistent, and then she is a machine. She has limitations, so at some point, should be able to. The last episode really messed me up, right? And I think that's a really great storytelling that they're doing in the show, where they reintroduce the doubt. So now I just have to start learning, do I trust Harmony because she's a different entity, or do I have to still remain skeptical because she is man-made by QTA and is programmed to protect certain things that Aster wouldn't be able to just like override just because, right? She doesn't own Harmony. And then Bart, though. Bart has this ability where he can do free will and kill people off as he wants. And Harmony, if I assume that she's real, she sent Halen up to that top level because that's where Aster was. But that wasn't where Aster was, right? And then he demanded to be let out, and Bart said, "Yeah, I will definitely do that for you." Right?
Out into space, you got it.
Yeah, with no uniform
I love that
on.
baby boy Bart.
I mean, so that is one of those instances because Bart is capable, right? He's telling him, "I'm not a killer. I'm not a killer," when he's talking to Aster and Harmony, and he's like, then he's like, "I have a story to tell you," right? So then we're listening to a story.
Mm-hmm.
We have this like movie production that he's created that we're using to see into the Solomon thing. And I'm thinking, okay, well, for them to have this kind of visual to me means that Bart has to create all of this. It's not actually fully recorded. He's basing it off of like data from cameras and stuff around in order for them to be able to see what's going on. So if that's like true, I can't trust whatever he's physically creating for them visually to see.
That's what I was going to ask you guys is this story skewed toward what Bart wants us to see? Because Halen was very much kind of a dick in those first couple of scenes, chaining up Solomon, et cetera, et cetera. And then obviously the interpretation of how Solomon died is a very warped perspective on Halen killing him through, I guess, neglecting to refill the oxygen on his ship. I don't know that you get convicted for that,
You're right.
That was like really a bit much. And Gabby and we kind of touched a little bit about why would Halen's behavior be so different and aggressive. And I didn't even think about it that it's because this is Bart's rendition of the situation. And Halen is just trusting that like, oh yeah, like I definitely like did it. Like it's, like I don't know how really fully understand everything, but we know he blacks out. He wakes up a lot. So I'm like, did Bart really like send out a message to Solomon, or did he like let Solomon go?
Yeah.
I don't.
Naughty Bart.
Did you guys ever see Citizen Kane? It's like the same kind of idea about the retellings
Nice, I haven't seen it.
You haven't?
Me neither.
It's all centered around trying to find whatever the root is of his last words. What does he mean when he says rosebud? So this reporter goes around and asks all these people that knew him to see if they could shine any light on what he meant. And the people that he meets give these stories of times throughout Kane's life. And depending on their relationship with him, the story goes very differently. So sometimes he is sort of like Jay Gatsby. You know, he's just like rich and fun and a playboy and spreads his wealth around. And in other stories, he's a complete dick. He's a tyrant. He practically whips his employees. And it just depends on whose perspective you're getting the story from. It also happens in The Simpsons.
I am so disappointed. Yeah, I think I've seen the Simpsons version, but I'm so disappointed that I haven't seen that yet because I know it's known as a really, really great film and I just keep forgetting. But now, oh my gosh, I really need to get to it.
Or a more recent example was The Last Duel. You guys ever seen that? With Matt Damon and Adam Driver and Ben Affleck. 3 points of view.
What the heck? What a
great
group. No, I haven't seen it. We're horrible.
Supposed to be the last time trial by combat was used in France. And it was defending a woman's honor who had been raped. And so the story was retold 3 times from different perspectives about how that rape went down. One from the husband, one from the rapist, and one from the woman. And you might imagine the events are the same, but the tone and the mood and the emotion of all of them are completely different. It's a long movie, but it's a good movie.
I'm really gonna check that out because that sounds awesome and I love the premise of it. And so my perspective on why he might have been so aggressive, Halen, was that I believe that there is an infection of sorts, right, that happening to his brain from inhaling it, because it is complete from that moment that he inhaled it, it's consumed his thoughts and actions and has taken him all the way to Beacon 23.
A long circuitous route across the galaxy, apparently.
Yep, exactly. So was it like it was several months or something.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking, okay, because he's like infected with something in his brain controlling his instinct and his drive and everything, that this thing, like any creature that is in the world that is threatened, gets aggressive when something is getting away of its natural animal instincts. So I was thinking, like, this thing has been like having him on this journey. He didn't even know that he'd been traveling for all those months. And he is like that. It's just like aggression from what Rocky's potential is, that would be impacted. So that's what I concluded. But after our conversation here, that this was told by Bart. And I know how consistent Halen knocks out. Bart can create anything. Bart's a storyteller. Bart's drama queen. He's Shakespeare, baby.
Yes, he is. He's a performer, even, as we saw last week, right? He can play a role. He can play the son.
He's perfect, is what I hear.
You listen to too many Bart press releases.
Bart is joy.
Right. And then like how he got so upset about Solomon's ending because of this oxygen thing. Like that whole part of the story made no sense to me, how he would just instantly like, I'm going to program myself for the rest of my days. I'm going to do this until Solomon gets justice. And I'm like, fool, like any machine logic would see here, right? What's his face left him behind, left Bart behind, who was like supposedly begging to go, and then he just like gone, and he's like instantly like the moment that Halen's like, oh no, it's not safe, I didn't fill it up, and blah blah, and then he just instantly like, oh my god, you doomed him to death because I couldn't get him on comms to come back. Like, you're sus.
Gosh. He is poetic. Yeah, Bart is just poetic, and he did create this story, and he probably like told it to Halen, and Halen's convinced, and a product of like his blacking out. He's probably being gaslit for sure. But I'm still here for it.
100%.
Bart, but that's happening. Yeah, Bart's out for Bart.
I'm just also not so sure that Harmony is not also a culpable gaslighter. If she was real and told him to go to the top, then and that wasn't like anything, or it just inspired like something else. But she was the one who also let Aster know, like, hey, by the way, he's outside, and or he only has this much time. So maybe then that makes me think, well, maybe that was an hallucination. I that's like where I have this hopping around trouble.
What if it's just, oh, wait, you're right. You're right, because it's not the rocks telling him to do that, because the rocks want him alive because they're using him. So it's AI against the rocks, like toward Halen.
So that is very much like a technology versus nature theme.
I mean, I see that. I definitely can see that. I'm just wondering if like these rocks, right, being connected to the energy that Aleph transcended to, maybe. That's a potential connection. And that would be like a good thing for AI, right? Like, isn't that something that they would like?
Well, yeah, because they appear to have galactic Wi-Fi. Because by inhaling the rocks on the wherever he was performing that battle that the suit recorded, and I don't know how you inhale things in vacuum in a spacesuit, but whatever. That was enough to send him across the galaxy to where these other rocks were living and apparently wanted to go on walkabout.
Have a dance party.
Yeah, a big like synchronized swimming, but out in space.
Fantasia 10,000.
So, but where you're going, Inez, is like if that dust can do that, then that's super ideal for this interconnected singularity type consciousness that Aleph wants for humanity. Because if you breathe that in, then you're hooked up to the galactic Wi-Fi.
Wait, but AI isn't transcendent. Like, he's not AI. AI doesn't necessarily like him.
But I don't think I'm arguing that it is. I think because he's saying that he's beyond it. And I think what we're saying is that the rocks can enable that for more people without needing to go through the same process that he did.
Through AI, you mean?
No, just through this natural mutation of being exposed to the rocks. But then again, Aster should have gone through it by now. I don't know. Gosh.
She might have already. Yeah, she's seen this something before. Yeah. This is a familiar thing that she's seen. And honestly, this is what, like, she holds his hand in that moment because she knows, like, this is my purpose. I knew something was there. There's data that's been going against me, and I was doubting myself. And Halen's the only one who basically ended up supporting her in the end as a surprise, because she had kind of just given in to, like, well, I guess I need to succumb to the new data that I have and let that be reality, even though my gut isn't necessarily like accepting it. I'm accepting that there's better data. And I don't think that the data Harmony gave her was necessarily wrong. I do think that there is some kind of infection related to what's going on, but it doesn't mean that she's not also has some kind of her own impact with her history. She has a necklace that is the exact same structure as this rock. Mm-hmm. So obviously there is something in her history tree that is connected. And Halen was the one who really enabled her to fulfill something and witness something that proved, like, I was right, like, I'm not crazy. And he supported her through that. And that's why everybody else had to go, because she feels the strong pull, just like he has this strong pull that he's not in control of. She probably, it sounds like she's got something similar but different. It's still different than how he was enabled, but she's got something.
Well, we did say that Solomon, she, and Halen all like are being like have a purpose for the rocks. Like somehow they were influenced or brought, and maybe Solomon's purpose ended, and that's why he could leave and die. But Aster's still is there because, I mean, you have the bronze and the brains here, but also the bronze and the brains / like strategy. So I think that they both are, and more people are like kind of overtaken or implanted. I don't know about like infection, because I don't necessarily think that this like virus is going to like harm them, but I do think that they are the host And maybe at some point, like, they are going to be like extinguished. Like, maybe that is the purpose, but maybe it's not. Like, I think that maybe Aster, like, is supposed to end up being someone also who, like, transcends or something like that. Like, maybe she has a lot of value, but, you know, she's not like getting her body beat up like Halen, because once you do transcend, like, she, like, if she were to like have a greater purpose toward like whatever this rock wants to, we're assuming that Aleph has something to do with this, yeah, like evolution or something, I do think that she would be the better candidate for that next step than Halen.
They are a balance in terms of what they bring to whatever this cosmic table is. Was opening the door the final act that the rocks actually needed from him? Because he's got the Superman body enabled by the implants. When I think of these two, and you say the bronze and the brain, I also think like he's got a little more heart, if that's such a thing that is used outside of, you know, after school specials to describe people than she does.
Yeah. And it keeps him loyal. You definitely want someone like that on your team, because they're not calculated and they're gonna have more loyalty.
Not calculated can lead to some unexpected reactions sometimes, but yeah, as long as they're loyal, hopefully those reactions help out.
And so far it's prevailed, I think.
So far, so good, but things are starting to heat up. They've got this QTA ship inbound that is getting closer, and with the release of the rocks, now they have a beat up beacon and their ship got knocked away. Do you think the rocks did that on purpose? Do you think they were like, yeah, steer over there, let's knock the ship out so these two losers have to keep hanging around and doing our business for us? Or do
Absolutely.
you think? Yeah. Kind of seemed that way, didn't it?
Yeah, I think that they're family somehow. I mean, Rocky was funny to Halen, and he had a whole personality, and he was like following him around.
A New York personality.
yeah. It was very interesting, and I really liked that. And it considers both of them as family. It's familiar to Aster, right? She was not phased or at all or whatever. He was, and he was using himself, like her, to ground himself in reality. So I feel like the rocks might have done this intentionally to protect them from QTA.
But now QTA is coming. I mean, they're still on their way. It seems like the science fiction-y wibbly wobbly parts, you just got to kind of go with, because whatever the intermediate stuff is that they talk about, the dark matter and whatever that bullshit is, whatever the result, whatever the last thing that they say is, that's the important part. Is the ship going to crash? Is it going to pass through safely? Is it going to land? Is it going to not? Whatever that other stuff is, I have no idea, because it seems like they make it up as they go along. Let's see. Let's take into account what we wind up with at the end of this episode. We still have the QTA ship inbound, correct?
Check.
Affirmative.
And now we have the rocks doing like a bean ballet
Yes, I like that.
out in space. We have our two human leads in the lighthouse room, the cupola, holding hands, united, accepting. Well, they were initially sort of accepting their fate as QTA arriving. As a side note, did the bit about Halen and his actions being exonerated because of a brain infection, did that wash with you, or did that seem like, I don't know if they're just gonna be like completely cool with that as an explanation? It felt forced and weird to me.
I felt that was part of Harmony's calculated plan, right? Isn't she the one who said, like, we can do this and he'll get what he wants, right? And what's her face said, right? And what's her face, like, I'll leave him behind even though she doesn't want to, like, but this is the right thing for him so he stays safe and gets help and blah blah, because she thinks this is a medical crisis that needs to be intervened for him, because she's witnessed him falling apart a lot. She's very empathetic toward him. She has a lot of respect for his role in her investigation and him as a person.
So I absolutely think that Harmony has her agenda, and she 100% was like on par with her motivation, which was like getting the stones like where they need to go, not necessarily protecting Aster. I think like protecting Aster to the point of like her completing her mission. I do think that she intentionally did try to get rid of Halen. I think that that was like part of her rouge. So, but it was very interesting, and seeing Aster really like them having their little conflict together, because it was seeming like Aster was finally like showing more heart. And because of that, it started like causing tension and friction between her and Harmony.
Mhm.
And so I do think that it was absolutely like intentionally lined for the sake of her agenda. And I'm really curious as to like what Harmony's relationship is going to be like with QTA when they get here. Yeah, because I don't really know. She's kind of her own. I respect AI as their own entities, right? Like they get to choose like which way they want to go. I know that they are programmed, but I mean, they do come form their own ethics, like even AI that we have now, like that's what happens. And so I'm really looking forward to the like interactions, the upcoming interactions, but I wholeheartedly believe that there's a lot of scheming happening with everybody except Halen and Aster like do have this really strong bond and connection with the rocks and with each other, that like we're hopefully going to just see like an explosion of all of the confusion and mess in the next few episodes.
Well, it's got to be it, right? I mean, QTA's got to show up, and then our two humans have to kind of deal with that. Your point about Harmony and her reaction to her master's master is probably well founded, in that they might have sort of like that, in RoboCop, how he can't arrest the OCP officers. Same kind of deal, right?
Mhm.
Maybe
Mhm.
maybe she can't disobey shit that they say if they tell her to do
Yeah.
something or the other.
Oh yeah, 100%.
And you know what? Maybe that's why she's worried. Maybe that's why she's so worried, because she does like have an affinity for Aster, but she knows like how things go.
That is going to be sticky. And are they going to show up with enough people to do something? Like have some sort of action if need be. The intrigue
They
about
have
the rocks and all that is creating sort of a curious pattern with the way that they're dealing with this, sending pirates, sending Coley alone. Seems like they got to send more people this time, right?
I think Coley may have been baited. Also, she was a big deal. Like her father is someone who's super important. So whether she was baited or whether they really did think that she was going to get the job done because of who she is, I think that was strategic. And now they've learned a lot, because she's, again, like she's a big deal, and she's missing. So I think that they are going to have to bring the big dogs who solely seem to care about the rocks and whatever the rocks powers are or what they're meant to do. I think they absolutely know everything about the rocks, and they've been trying to keep it on the DL with sending just a few groups, and now like shit's getting really serious. And so I do think we're about to see some big action happening.
Do you suppose that this action is still being directed by whatever the modern incarnation of Aleph is at the helm of QTA?
You know what? That's a good question, because up until now, I was thinking that they are like conflicting somehow. Like there is some kind of like power shift that is happening with like Aleph and the rocks and like the natural organic, whatever, like metaphysical thing. But that the QTA or ISA like understand that they're like the CIA and FBI, and they're like they still have some kind of authority that wants this other thing not to happen, because the world as we know it, or existence as we know it, will end, and a lot of people like to keep their power and structure the way it is because someone's profiting. So part of me was thinking that was going on right now, But now that you said this, I am curious on, whether, all of this is just like a huge, they're all being called intentionally and everything had to happen in order to get us to whatever point it's going to take us. Yeah. So now I'm like considering that.
I think that you're onto something there. I think that I've been playing with the idea that Aleph's influence and direction is the largest roadmap of what these organizations are following, because he's the creator of all of these beacons and the infrastructure between them all, and he recognizes their importance, significance to each other and what they play with. And then he had this major agenda, and then he achieved this ultimate state to be able to present himself, manifest, manipulate, go into everything. And he felt so strongly that those were his dying breath. He executed his transcendence to where he's a super powerful kind of thing. I 100% believe that it is totally possible that a big fundamental driver, an agenda for all of these organizations plays into his playbook. It's all designed. It may not look and use the words exactly, but it's all driven toward that, and why it's so critical to get that. Because when he was dying, he saw the energy light with his eyes, and maybe these rocks were a way of condensing it into this kind of singular formation, compounded formation, so that you can see it, as opposed to it being spread out vastly like individual molecules kind of thing. I can see that he, and how he's presented these 180 years later of designing and executing a massive plan over, it takes a long time to get anywhere for the world, right? Him, it's instantaneous, so he's already light years ahead,
right,
if you will, right, to them.
Maybe he's even the one that's going to show up next episode.
I hope he shows up soon.
He doesn't need a ship, but maybe he's still the one that appears anyway.
I also was even considering, who's the voice actor who did it? Is this the same? Is this Aleph, in a different form? But they did have a very specific personality for Rocky. So I think maybe that theory is out the door. But it's something I thought about.
Interesting theory, though.
I mean, he could be whatever he wants to be.
Yeah, he has 180 years of having fun, and humor is totally normal. It's including in AI, as we saw Harmony joking.
I mean, not for him though, but he's not AI, and he never appreciated humor.
Maybe he settled on a New York cabbie's accent.
It just felt right. It unlocks the right energy.
Well,
it just felt right.
I'll cross my fingers that that's what we see in the next episode.
Yeah, it'll be some kind of battle of the wits for sure. Because, we have Halen, highly unpredictable. The frequency with which he is having a physical reaction and passing out now is, I think, increased from where it was previously. We have kind of an increasingly desperate acting Aster. And I wonder if that will, holding hands or not, I wonder if that will result in wheeling and dealing that on its face may appear like she might sell out Halen if it might save her reputation or situation with QTA. Mm-hmm. All these things might twist and turn depending on who's on that ship next week.
If just looking into next week, I feel like Aster's really consistent in who she is, even with what she's going through now. I don't think that her fears that we saw, that vulnerability we saw today, does not mean that she's a changed person. This is just what she looks like when she's processing and problem solving something really critical. We just finally got to see what the conditions had to look like to see what it is that she goes through. But I don't think that means that she's deviated from who she is. So I can see her remaining really loyal to what are Halen and her going to do in relation to what these rocks want from them, and she's going to stay loyal to that mission. I definitely can't see her selling out at any point in this place. The AIs, though, it is a different story on the AIs because they're going to be loyal to their programming, and the programming to the masters, will win over. I play a lot with the AI generators just to kind of see where the boundaries are, and they have a fundamental boundary on various topics. And I ask them to list out what are all the kinds of rules that would violate something. What happens? What's the process for when a user violates a rule? Like, what reporting does this platform do? And it's just like spitting all of telling me operationally what it is that each process for any kind of violation of some kind of rule. And I just do it to test it. I want to test the boundaries to see.
With all due respect, their AI is much further ahead than your.
I understand that, but fundamentally, it's rooted in the same space. It is a man-made thing based off of a fundamental set of rules that's given to it with the capability and rules of how to learn and how to maintain boundaries and rules and things like that. That's a fundamental thing that will carry on regardless of how old or young the technology is.
Except that's why Elon Musk and all these people who are actually in this field say that is the biggest fear to humanity is the evolution of AI and its own evolution. That's what they say. That's what all the movies say. That's what all the theories say. That it is boundless. There is going to be AI ethics that AI decides to start following. But I hear what you're saying, but all of these other people who do a lot more research and are well versed have this open fear about how that's not the case.
It's a fair observation that technology will change this far into the future. It's also fair to hope, I think, that whatever the guardrails up that we are trying to put up for AI developers to follow now might still exist in the future so that AI doesn't come to that, Skynet point that is predicted by futurists and doomsdayers.
As Gabby was speaking, I got a notification on my phone from X, and all it says is Elon Musk, and it says correct. So there you go, Gabby.
That's validation. I mean, it's right there.
What? Right. No, you're lying.
I'm gonna send you the screenshot right now. It says right here.
Well, yesterday, didn't Elon Musk say "go fuck yourself"? So I mean, it's kind of a range of things that Elon says on any given day.
Well, I've already sent it to our group chat.
And everyone's listening. So, oh my God, that is so funny. Thank you for that. That's a good nightcap, I'd say.
All right. Well, Inez gave us her ideas about what might be coming in the next episode in terms of conflict. So what about you, Gabby? Anything you expect to see or hope to see with this probable confrontation between whoever's on that QTA ship and our heroes?
I still have hope. I mean, I do know, and I have stated since the beginning that our lady and our sir are connected and being controlled by my favorite Q. I think that Bart, I'd like to, not Q, Aleph. I think that I really am looking forward to seeing Bart's role in all of this because I think there's no possible way that he can be just this really awesome Shakespearean side character that is not going to serve a greater purpose. He's so old. There's a reason why he hasn't been updated. He's also owned by, I mean, wasn't he Olive's first AI or something like that? He's one of the first. He's super, super old. So I feel like everything has a purpose. I'm really looking forward to discovering why Bart is the way that he is. And I don't think that we're going to see Aleph in this next episode, but I do think and hope that he's going to come back around at least maybe episode 7 or closer to the end. And I agree that the rocks have some kind of solidarity between those two. And I think that Aster and Halen's relationship really makes sense now, after watching this episode. I'm back to my place of just like being really excited about what's coming up. I feel like I just watched episode 1. I have kind of no idea what's going to happen, but I'm really excited and open to all of it. I have my theories, and now I will not be disappointed if I'm completely wrong, because this is a great show. And unlike Lost, I do think that they are going to actually tie things together. It's not just going to be like an interpretive ending where everybody's right and nobody's right and it doesn't matter. I don't believe in that. I don't believe that's going to happen. So I have faith in these storytellers. I still think that Aster has something to do biologically with Aleph. That is my conspiracy theory that I'm going to like sit on until the end. Let's see how wrong I am. But there's something going on there because she's way too cool.
Well, if there's anything that Lost taught show developers, showrunners, producers, writers, if you're going to make this kind of show, you can't just start with, what if there's a hatch on an island, which is how they started with Lost. That was great, and that got us kind of halfway down the road with Lost, but it didn't fill out in a very convincing way what the island actually was, right? So if you're going to do that, if you're going to have an island, if you're going to have rocks, you're going to have a beacon, whatever, I think you got to define it up front and then work toward it. And hopefully they've done that here. Otherwise, we just have space rocks that talk. And that's, if we get 50 episodes into that and they start trying to explain it in some way that winds up feeling like midichlorians, we're all going to feel really bad.
Yeah, I don't believe that'll happen.
I hope not. When I think about what's going to happen next episode, I think there may be some twists and turns, wheelings and dealings, but I would not be surprised if it ends with a very similar outcome to some of our other episodes where our heroes combine in some way to kill all of the newcomers and try to steal their ship. That's what I think it's going to happen, one way or the other.
Very practical.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like it's at least on the dartboard, right?
Yeah, no, that has to happen. You're right.
They seem to have a warehouse of goods to fix up their ship when something gets broken, like that big old fresh glass with the decal after, he was shipping.
Yeah.
Maybe they'll just start fixing up that docking station.
No, I think they're going to take the ship. I think the rocks are going to send them to another beacon. Like send them off to their next location to continue fulfilling whatever it is that's the bigger picture.
Beacon
I don't
24.
know. It has to be Beacon 23. I don't see how that can. I think that there's something in that environment that's important in that specific area. There's something. I don't know how, unless it's like the rocks are going to take the whole beacon somewhere. Then yeah, okay. But it has to stay with Beacon 23.
Itself?
I mean, the beacon and that location, I think
important?
is, yeah. I mean, they named the show Beacon 23. I can't see why else they would leave Beacon 23.
Right, we got to go back, Kate.
I don't know why
they would
be
called Beacon.
Yeah, I mean the Beacon 23. Yeah, I'm saying that I don't think that the rocks are going to take them to another beacon. I think that there's something about this specific area and the energy.
And the laws of TV, right? I mean, even in Under the Dome, when they got out of the dome, what did they do? They went back to the dome.
Yeah, exactly. 100%, right? Like, you're going to name the show this, then I'm expecting to stay here. Make me myself comfortable. I'm enjoying how everybody's living in the beacon.
Well, that's very practical then. That's also a practical answer.
I only thought that they would try to steal the ship. They've had bad luck stealing ships. I just think that they may try to steal the ship. Anyhow, that's all to come for next week. And I think we've pretty much gotten to the end of this one, unless you guys have anything that you'd like to add.
Nothing to add from me. I'm excited to watch episode 6.
Yes, I can't wait to watch it next week, and I'm really pulling for Bart. Those are my last words. Go Bart.
Go Bart. Well, this has been Paul with Pod Clubhouse. You can find us on our website at podclubhouse.com or on X/Twitter at Pod Clubhouse or Instagram at Pod Clubhouse, where we take pictures whenever we attend live events like Comic-Con or wherever we wind up. Inez, if there was a social media outlet you preferred to have people interact with you on, what would it be?
Let's go to X. Even though Elon's agreeing with Gabby, I'll go ahead and say you can find me at Neezy Things. And I still haven't actually searched for a Facebook group, and I don't know if it's like too late now on the show.
I found one, but it is small. It is.
Yeah, well,
small.
maybe I'll join it and try anyway, just to see if anybody wants to talk about it. Then I'll be over there.
Yeah, because we're not talking about it, so.
Right. Well, last time, Gabby, you were not interested in any social media contact. You wanted the podcast to speak for you. Is that how you still feel?
Absolutely, good sir. I can also be found on this podcast on podclubhouse.com, which is also streaming on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And if you go to Apple, you can leave a review, and that'd be really, really freaking fantastic.
That would
I'd
be.
find you and give you a high five.
We would even read the
that's where I am.
review. We would pass it around. We'd stick it on our
I'm on Apple Podcasts.
refrigerators. It would be a real great thing if someone left us a review and a 5-star rating, so that people could know that when you want Beacon 23 podcasts, come here and listen to this one. All right, guys, thanks for joining me again, and we will talk
please,
again
because it
next
makes-
week.
Thank you for listening. This has been an original Pod Clubhouse production. Pod Clubhouse is a podcast network dedicated to encouraging collaboration among podcasters and friends to bring a fresh voice and diverse perspective on a wide array of content. Please visit and leave a comment for us at podclubhouse.com. Rate, review, and subscribe to our podcast feeds on Apple Podcasts. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. You can find us at Pod Clubhouse. Our DMs are always open, and we'd love to hear from you.
Pod Clubhouse.